Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who needs to quickly check his pulse oximeter. You see, if this number right here is 98 or 99, that means I don't have to go to the hospital. All right, 99. I have COVID. Triple vaccinated, masked all the time. It can happen to anyone. So please excuse me if this is not my usual decor. I'm in my funk basement. I've not had a chance to either slick back nor push back my hair. And I'm here, in theory, I could take this video off, but I don't want to. I've been sitting with this new Hippo Campus album. I love talking about Hippo Campus. They're one of my favorite bands to cover. They're one of my favorite bands in existence. So I'm going to fight through, I'm going to fight through in this weird time where I'm in COVID quarantine in the basement. And the best time listening to this album. This is an album which requires multiple listenings for reasons I'll get into in a second. But the best time I had listening was this morning with my son. We were eating Captain Crunch cut with Cheerios right on this very table, and we were listening to it, and he's a fan as well, and we got to listen to it and really experience it. And that's what makes it such an interesting album, is that it requires such dedication from the listener. And this is something which I've noticed about them ever since I first reviewed them with my 9th review. All the way back in 2018. It was my first review to get over 50 views. I was really excited. This made me sort of love the band and love their fans, because even though I was a nobody, I was getting a fair amount of response from people who really cared. And that tells you something about the quality of the band when their fans like them that much. But what a lot of them said was that this second album, Bambi, was so different from the first one, Landmark. And I found this interesting because that's like my favorite thing that bands do, is when bands change and when fans have to adapt or fall off. That's where I think the most interesting musicianship comes in. So, I last reviewed their EP, which came out a couple months ago, and I found that interesting, quite challenging. Apparently that was recorded after this. Now that I'm in the COVID club, and very fortunate because I don't have to go to the hospital, thanks to the numbers on this stupid thing. Everything's just gotten super goofy with music releases and timing and everything. So it's funny that I've listened to their most recent stuff a couple months ago, but this album itself feels to me like it's their future. Who knows what anyone's going to do when this is all over. So, the last EP, it was kind of all over the place. Like, at times it reminded me of, 100 Gex. At times it reminded me of Sugar Ray. At times it reminded me of New Order. Kind of a lot of different, interesting, good influences. But really emphasizing this idea that they're a band that refuses to just do the thing that they're loved for, to keep shifting and keep changing. The fact that they titled this album LP3 kind of hints to that. If you're on Reddit boards or whatever, or if you're on fan forums before that, or Facebook pages or whatever, that's how fans refer to the next albums of their favorite groups. When's Radiohead going to come out with LP11, right? So even calling it LP3 feels like it is in some kind of dialogue with the fans. So what I did was I went to Reddit last night before trying to go to bed, being woken up by coughing and this terrible night. I asked on Reddit. I asked the Hippo Campus fans, hey, what do you superfans think of this album? Because even though I had read a lot of what they said, I didn't get any real clear consensus. So this is what I got. This is from Buckeye24. Thank you, Buckeye24. I don't know you, but you provided what I think is a very succinct summary. Superfans know that the band is evolving and has been changing since inception. They've done a great job. The music shows growth without compromising good music. Parentheses, and this parentheses means a lot. Ideally, I would prefer more indie rock, but they've been moving towards indie pop since their first album, Landmark. That parentheses says a lot. This is about that challenge. A couple other people said it's the best thing they've ever done. And a couple other people just sort of seem to be a little bit upset along the lines of that parentheses, wishing they would stay indie rock and not go towards indie pop. Over here you see some of my son's Hail to the Thief collection. Radiohead is, I think, the best template of this style of band, which I think to be the best style of band. I just reviewed Black Country New Road, who appear to be doing basically the same thing. Sip of tea here. So what Radiohead managed to do, really since the Bends, was each album make some kind of change or shift, and then with each album they slough off fans who aren't real fans who have to follow them along. The problem is this, though. There was a limit. So when Radiohead went from Pablo Honey to the Bends, it lost its 90s one-hit wonder fans. It gained some cool hard rockers, and then OK Computer lost a couple people who just like rock music, and then Kid A and Amnesiac lost a ton of people who hated the bleeps and bloops. And then people who just like that bleeps and bloops got alienated by Hail to the Thief. And then ultimately In Rainbows came to sort of unify everybody. But what about the King of Limbs? Every one of these bands who does these changes, whether it be, Daft Punk, Neil Young, Radiohead, like these great, wonderful bands, whenever there's always at least one album, Kanye, another example, one of these bands, one of these albums, I may misspeak, I don't edit my videos, but I'm like running on 50% capacity here, so it's all cool. It's all good. My voice is kind of ASMR-y as well, which we'll get into. That was one of the complaints about this album. I'll talk about that soon. Eventually you run into a King of Limbs where it's not that it's so radical or that it's so regressive. It's just that it's not that good. The King of Limbs by Radiohead is just not that good. By that, I mean it's not as good as the rest of their albums. It's still a great album. So that's the real question with all of these bands. At what point do you hit, Life of Pablo? At what point do you hit sort of the weaker album that even though you're still innovating, you're sort of losing the big fans too? Well, I'm happy to say that is not the case with LP3 with their fans, and it's not the case with me. What's funny is I'd never heard of them until I did the review, and now I've seen them in concert several times, and I own most of their albums on vinyl, and every time they come out with something, I'm very excited. So I'm not quite a super fan. I still don't know the names of all the members of the band, etc. But I got that thrill that you get when you're a fan of a band like this, of not liking it the first time. It's a weird thing to say, but it's a thrill. When I first heard LP3, I was like, oh man, god damn, how is this even a band album? I mean, it's like, is this like hyper pop? Is it bedroom pop? Is this even rock and roll? What is this production? What is this vocal? What is going on with this? Like, I get excited for that because I trust. I trust Hippo Campus right there behind me to do the right thing, to make something great that defies my initial disappointment. Now, how did it do this? Well, one way is it does require multiple listens. And it requires multiple listens in different ways. The best way listening to it, it turns out, was eating Captain Crunch with my son while we're both in quarantine. The second best way is headphones. If you can't be in my basement with my son and having Captain Crunch, which I don't think you can, I would go with headphones because the details of the production are so good. This album is very sneakily, very, very well produced. There's a lot of great details, a lot of great layers. Lyrically, it seems to be following up on the EP of just sort of somebody who thinks he's a bad guy, like a guy who seems to cheat on his girlfriend, can't keep a long-distance relationship, suffers from substance abuse. There's one line, which I think is the subtitle to the entire album. I'm not that guy, I'm barely keeping it together. It seems to me that this whole album is him saying I'm not that guy, while kind of fearing that he is that guy, while sort of admitting to being that guy. And that guy is, for lack of a better term, just sort of acting like a douchebag. I don't like that term, but that appears to be the crisis at the heart of this album, is fearing that you are what you do, and what you do is not great. So, let's get more into details. Let's get into the actual album with my stamp, my example song of the record. Ride or Die. I'm going to include a link to it up there. right next to George A. When I first played one of my favorite albums in the world for my brother Amos, All We Got Is Us by Onyx, it was a cassette tape back in the day. He picked it up at the Warwick Mall in Rhode Island. And he put it in his tape player, and he pressed play, and it has this kind of unpleasant intro. And he rolled down his window. He hit eject. He took the tape and threw it out the window. That action is beautiful. It's funny, a little insulting, but, I get it. It was all about suicide. My brother doesn't like that theme. I don't blame him. When I first heard this song, in my head, when I hear a song that I hate as much as I hated Ride or Die the first time, in my head, I am back in that parking lot in Warwick, Rhode Island, and I'm hitting eject, and I'm taking the cassette of LP3, and I'm chucking it out the window. What is this? Ride or Die? What kind of weird pop writing garbage is this? Is that a dance hall rhythm that they're playing around here? Like, when I first heard it, I hated it. But then the second part is kind of interesting. No, but I still don't like it. The second time, I don't like that dance hall bit, but the structure is actually kind of interesting. By the third time, I just can't wait. Ride or die, but ride dead. By the time I got to my third listen, I was fiending after the thing that I initially hated. That's that act. That's that beautiful thing that can happen. When I first heard Idiotech by Radiohead, I hated it. When I first heard Get Lucky by Daft Punk, I was like, what is this disco garbage? This kind of experience. So this song starts off with this dance hall rhythm, which eventually gets rid of. These real kind of pop themes of Ride or Die, weird lyrics. If you really want to go outside for my love, ride or die for my love, could you see right through me? So I have to move the camera so that I'm not hunching over. Now I'm hurting my back. I'm sleeping on an air mattress, so it's not great. My back. I'm a 44-year-old man. I should not be sleeping on an air mattress. Better than a ventilator. So, these kind of weird lyrics, do you want to go outside for my love, ride or die for my love, could you see right through me? The cliche of ride or die for my love, right? A super cliche line that we hear all the time, especially in hip-hop music, mixed up with could you see right through me, which is a pretty important and profound line about love and about being with somebody and having vulnerability. And that's kind of what the lyrics are doing all the way through this album, throwing around pop pithy lines and then following them with something a little bit deeper and a little bit darker. What I like about the song so much, and what I hinted at already, is the structure. It's got a weird structure. It starts off with a chorus, and then this very sweet instrumental with these guitar lines and what sounds like a rain stick in the back. And then they repeat the chorus, but this time with the instrumental layers from that instrumental bit layered in on top. And then a crazy post-chorus, an instrumental post-chorus with this guitar and these drums interacting in a way that's the best point of the entire album. We're out of the dance hall rhythm. It just has this this beautiful moment. And when I was, sorry, I'm just I got mixed up on my notes here. It then fades totally out. And then as it fades out, the bridge starts, the song ends, and it basically restarts and gets super epic. Where these the drums have this echo reverb on it. It almost sounds like the outro to the movie The Breakfast Club, like that kind of 80s epicness. And I realized how bad I can't wait to see this in concert. That's the thing. They're one of the best shows I've ever seen, truly. I mean, I've seen them twice, and each time was great. They are a great band. If you like rock and roll music, played in concert, you must see them. And so I just can't wait to see it, because then after it gets all epic and weird, it snaps back into focus. And the chorus that was in the beginning and was repeated twice is there, but no more dance hall, no more doom, doom, ga. We just have this chorus, ride or die for my love, could you see right through me? And then all of a sudden it's just this great feel-good music, and it ends with these weird noises that you realize have been playing the whole time. masterfully written, masterfully produced, masterfully performed, and weird as hell. And completely unsettling if the way that you're thinking about the band is the way you thought about them on Bambi, which was confusing if the way you thought about Bambi is the way you thought about them with Landmark. Thank God there are bands that are doing this more. Yeah. So let's go through the rest of the album. First track is called Too Young to Die, with the numbers. Now, I couldn't understand this song because I've never heard One Young, One Die. The song after... Sorry, that's a joke of mine. If it wasn't funny, I'm going to blame COVID. But smash the like bucket if it was funny. Leave some comments about how funny that was, or how not funny that was, or how painful it is to watch a 44-year-old man deal with back pain and COVID while sitting in his basement talking about awesome rock music. You can leave a comment about that. So Too Young to Die is the opening track, and it's a declarative statement about what the album is going to be like. This blown out guitar line sounds super clipped, super weird, really poppy voice that ends up being very sparse. The musicianship ends up being very sparse, instrumental behind, almost like 2000s era electronic details, poppy kind of bedroom pop chorus, a really super sad chorus, really. Everyone thinks they're too young to die. A very sad idea. The post-chorus has this like experimental blown out drums and horns, weird vocoder sounds. In the chorus, the whole thing is just super maximal, and that's kind of an enunciation of what we're going to have for the rest of the album. The next track is one of my favorite, called Bluets. This weird automated sequencer that's a little bit too fast, and this voice comes out of nowhere, and I swear to God, this reminds me the most of the Bee Gees. Of all the music this could make me think of, this reminds me of the Gibbs in his super high, beautiful singing voice. But then it gets kind of weird and chopped up, and we have some of my favorite lyrics, count your bluets, like count your mistakes. I think that's kind of funny. And then outro is this cool, lyrically interesting bit about lyrically interesting how he deli read. Okay, I don't know what that means. Could you tell? What does this mean? Lyrically interesting about how he deli read the lines. I don't know what it means, but now this is. Previously, what I said, one of the things I like so much about the Stamp, about Ride or Die, is this instrumental section. And when my son heard this song, Bluets, he goes, now this is Hippo Campus, because there is this insane little instrumental section of just the guitars and this kind of like funky, super connected song. Like just the band is playing really well together, and this is the excitement about them. And the whole album's kind of a shame because you don't get to hear them that much as a band. I guess they made a lot of this album, on Zoom or whatever. But just this little interaction, as my son said, no one else can do that. I don't think so. He compared a little bit to Phoenix, and I do think that Phoenix is the best comparison to Hippo Campus in terms of like how hard they are to place, but how easy they are to love. And just sort of the way they sound, and even the way their lyrics are constructed to a certain extent. But this is just that, like, okay, here's a weird automated electronic song, and it's all kind of chippy and choppy and cut up, but then just this beautiful section of musicianship. And that's the kind of thing, that first listen when I didn't like the album, I couldn't hear that. I just heard, it just all washes over you, which is why you need to pay attention, which is why I'm here. Help you pay attention. Next song is called Ashtray. It actually made me think, ashtrays used to be a really big part of daily life. Like everybody had an ashtray, multiple ashtrays in their house. It was like a whole thing. It's a good thing that we're past that, at least in this country. Not in former Yugoslavia. Those people smoke. Whew. So, Ashtray is great. It's kind of this weird, oddly compressed, over-engineered sound. But then, like, the guitars, it sounds almost like the Foo Fighters, like, or like Weezer or something. Like, this is a very kind of straightforward rock song at times. Kind of sweet emo singing, some actual real drumming. And that's one of my main problems. I've said multiple times on this channel, I think the drummer, Whistler, I forget his last name, I apologize. I would know it if it weren't for COVID brain. He's one of my favorite drummers in rock, and it's the Phil Selway problem. Like he's a great drummer, but the band is sort of beyond a point where they can always use his drums, which is why you just have to see it in concert so you can see the way that he still plays these things and goes in together. The post-chorus is more just great, super funky guitar work, just great drums, super cool. Again, this was another good example of this thing that they do that other bands don't do. Again, my son just says, "Oh my God, this is just so great." The second verse has a cool kind of high harmony far in the background, and then there's a weird pre-chorus before the final chorus, which basically changes rhythms and becomes borderline polyrhythm. All these little details all kind of going in to making what can seem like a simple, straightforward song quite complicated and rich. I realize I've now 3 times talked about these little moments, these little instrumental moments, and each time I've said that they were the best. This is the best, the one in Ashtray. This is the actual moment. So, as I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of like going through them in my head. I think if you are lamenting Hippo Campus's change, listen to Ashtray and listen to that silky guitar and drum work, how it all goes together here in this post-chorus. And tell me they're not the best band still. My house agrees. Next song is called Bang Bang, which is a weirdly sexual long-distance relationship song. Some great drumming, although still paired with a machine. The drummer's also doing some background vocals. Just weirdly sexual, like hard to talk with my tongue in your mouth. But this line keeps getting repeated over and over again. Bang, bang, cheap, cheap, back it up, back it up. So we have like Ride or Die, Too Young to Die, Bang Bang Cheap Cheap, a lot of sort of hip-hop style repetitive choruses throughout this album. Sort of like somebody who's like listening to hip-hop radio or like the top 40 radio and kind of like disassociating the words and trying to recontextualize them. Very well layered, very sweet. The bridge on this song is another highlight of the album with Jake and then the drummer Whistler kind of interacting vocally. Semi-Pro is is my least favorite song on the album. It's a cool kind of nice synthesizer lead over acoustic guitars, but I just don't like the acoustic guitars very much. But I do find the themes interesting, which is about being semi-professional. This is part of what interests me so much about the band, is that they're so good, but not famous. And this is sort of the problem. The problem is not that no one's making rock and roll, it's that rock and roll stars are no longer the biggest stars in music. So, Hippo Campus should be at least as, if we're doing like 90s analogy, Hippo Campus should be at least as big as like Soundgarden was, Like they don't have to be Nirvana or Pearl Jam, but like they're good enough and interesting enough that they should be that popular. But yet, they're kind of forced through the market to be in this kind of marginalized position, which it seems that what they're talking about with the idea of being semi-professional musicians. Ride or Die was the stamp. Next song, Scorpio. It's cool. It's like just voices that are slightly pitched, and then eventually some super compressed sounds come in, a very catchy chorus about a necessary evil. Cool sounds going on it with a lot more drums. There's a little bit more drums that are free here. From what I can tell from the fan takes on this album, this is a least favorite song, which I sort of get. It's maybe less compelling. Listerine is just it's like a groove, sort of out of nowhere on this album. This album isn't very groovy with like drums and bass and setting grooves. But this really has just a great drum groove and bass and very altered, very interestingly produced vocals all the way through. This is one of the complaints that people seem to be saying is about the ASMR feeling. See, I said it would come back. The ASMR feeling of the vocals on parts of this album where it sounds like he's sort of like eating the microphone. But I think that's uncharitable. I think it's actually quite good because it's part of this interesting vocal production all the way through, especially when it interplays with other vocalists like it does on this song and the previous song. More lyrics about being a bad person. I can't wash the effed up out of me. I really like this song, even though, once again, it reminds me a little bit of Sugar Ray, which is a bad indie pop band of the 90s. which I guess is the real issue, is how to go from indie rock to indie pop. And then, like, they're going from indie rock to indie pop, but they're not doing it as sellouts. Like, it would make sense if they were doing it, and they were just doing it because they're going to get that, Billie Eilish money. But they're not going to. They're just going to indie pop because that's what they want to do artistically. They're probably losing money by going pop. Because if they just stayed indie rock, they would have an easier lane to identify. Like my brother who likes rock and roll and who likes the last couple Hippo Campus albums. I'm not sure I'm going to recommend this to him because of that. So in a way, they're not selling out by going pop because they're staying true to what they want to make as artists. I know words have meaning, but it's funny that you can not sell out by going pop. The next song is called Boys, kind of a return to the Bambi mode. Maybe the closest to a song that would fit on Bambi on the entire album. Cool kind of like whiny, distorted guitar lines that make up the melody. I really like it when they give this guitar line a little bit of time to shine, to breathe in the middle of the song. It seems to be it's a song about like waking up and thinking you have to change your life. Lyrically, I sort of worry about this guy. That's just the sort of impression I get, that he's not adjusting well to the life of a semi-pro rock star. This is my mug, which you can buy if you want to be like me in your basement. It's a mug. You can drink herbal tea, just like me. The repeat listening to this album especially brought out certain things. And the bridge in this, like the tricks of the production on the bridge of this song is really worth listening to. The final song is Understand, and it is a great closing song. And one of the other complaints that people seem to have about this album is there's a lack of sort of interplay between the songs, a lack of sort of flow. And I sort of get that. But this album ends so cohesively with this final song. This final song really feels like a great ending, a really great capper. I think that opinion on the fans' part might change eventually. Cool kind of organ to start off, like just organ, which is an instrument I don't think we've heard at all on the album. Cute sort of lyrics, and this singer, Jake, I now know his name, has a lot of really interesting phrasing on this album. Just in general, he's very interesting in the phrasing, where he'll like extend lines and cut them out and create interesting rhythms with that. I felt that a lot, especially on like Bang Bang, where he just knows how to like chop up these words and rhythmically play with them to the point where their meaning is obscured. It's almost like they become an instrument, and we hear that a little bit on here as well. I do like the lyrics here though, because it seems to be a lot about this long distance relationship and about what a long distance relationship should be. And we hear that a lot in the chorus, which is kind of searching. It's just like organ and voice. So the opening, like, this is a good example of the layering of this album and this band, where it starts off and it's just organ and voice, and that's what the first chorus is, with this great line, I don't care what we are, it just has to work. Where we end is something far, something hard to understand. So this interesting idea, I don't care what we are, it just has to work. I'm now a happily married man, but I've been in a number of chaotic relationships throughout my life. And that's like a really good way to describe what you need. I don't care what it is, it just has to work. There's something like primal about that. Like, I don't care what it is, it just has to work. And then after this, we have this beautiful intersecting guitar lines, playing different kinds, like different brands of guitar, very clearly different guitars, and like playing different lines. And then the second verse, we have some drums here. They're doing a slight stutter step, kind of like with Ride or Die. They do a lot of subtle rhythmic changes throughout their songs. And then the guitar's added and the bass. He sings in the verse, I am getting clean, which is nobody who sings about getting clean is clean. So that's a little troublesome. But what do I know about these guys' life? Maybe he's talking about something else. I don't know. But the sounds of beer cans that are going underneath while they're playing doesn't help my suspicions that this song is kind of a cry for help. The second chorus is just amazing because it's the same chorus, but now it's all filled up with all this other instrumentation. There's a nice bridge, and then a guitar solo. An actual guitar solo. Praise be to the ghost of Jimi Hendrix. An actual guitar solo. It is so... Every time I hear a good guitar solo, I get excited. And listen, I'm not some boomer dude who wishes that there should be more guitar solos. Nah, screw it. Guitar solos have had their day. In general, it's good that they're not all over the place. But can we get one? Can we get like 3? Can we get like 5? Can we get 10 good guitar solos a year? And I don't mean like, listening to some awesome guy who everyone loves at Guitar Center. I mean like stylistically proper, like artistically rich, moving guitar solos that fit and are not just a display of skill, but a display of taste and talent. Like this guitar solo. Just great. And then a recapitulation with the chorus, but now instead of just the keyboard, just the organ, it's now just the guitar. Great production. We go on a whole journey. That's why I like this song in particular as the ending, because it has this whole kind of journey, repeats over and over again, the guitar and the drums, and I just can't wait to see it live. Did I do it? Did I make an okay video? Should I have not even released this because I'm not 100%? I think my main problem is I kept forgetting what that one part was that was super awesome that my son and I were talking about. But that's a testament to the album that there's at least 3 points that could have been. Okay, well, I am going to... I'll take my temperature too while I'm at it. Let's see here. 98.1. I'm going to have a Ricola, I'm going to take a nap, and I'm going to get ready to teach remotely tomorrow. Commerce waits for no one. Okay, until next time, tell me what you think about the album, smash the like bucket, and there's the camera.